So, this happened about 3 years ago. I was living in a small town just outside the city. Kind of a typical suburban area. Quiet, neighbors mind their business, the whole small town vibe. I had recently moved into this little house, just me and my dog Bailey. I'd rented it because it was cheap and kind of tucked away from everything. At the time, I thought it was perfect. Peaceful, Everything was great for the first few months. I'd settled in, gotten to know a couple of neighbors, and life was just going on as usual. Bailey, my golden retriever, loved the place. She'd spend hours out in the backyard chasing birds and squirrels. But then, things started happening. It was subtle at first, things you could write off as nothing. The first thing I noticed was that Bailey started acting weird. I know people always say dogs can sense things before we do, and I never really believed that until now. She started growling at corners, the kind of low, guttural growl that makes your blood run cold. At first, I thought she was just being protective, maybe hearing a noise outside or something. But then it got worse. She'd refuse to go into certain rooms, especially my bedroom. Every time I tried to coax her in there, she'd stop dead at the doorway, hackles up, and stare at something. Nothing that I could see, but clearly something was there for her. Now, I'm not the kind of person who jumps to ghosts or paranormal explanations. I figured she was just spooked by something. Maybe she had a bad dream, or there was a scent she didn't like. But after a couple of weeks of this, it was starting to creep me out. Especially because it wasn't just Bailey anymore. I started noticing things too. It began with small stuff. Doors I knew I'd closed would be open. Lights I'd turned off were back on. I'd find things moved around, like my keys being on the kitchen counter when I was sure I left them by the front door. I'm forgetful, sure, but this was happening too often for me to just shrug off. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was more stressed than I realized, and my mind was playing tricks on me. But then came the phone calls. It was a Friday night, and I was home alone, of course. I'd settled in with a beer, and was watching TV, trying to wind down after a long week. Bailey was curled up next to me on the couch, and everything seemed normal, until my phone rang. I glanced at the clock. It was just past 11, and I didn't recognize the number. I almost didn't answer, but I figured, why not? Maybe it was a wrong number. Hello? I said, trying to sound more awake than I felt. At first, there was nothing. Just static, like when you're in a bad cell area. I was about to hang up when I heard something. It was faint, but there was definitely someone on the other end, whispering. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it wasn't like a normal whisper. It was harsh, frantic, like whoever was speaking was scared, or in pain. Hello, I said again, louder this time. Who is this? Still no response, just more whispering. And then, click. The call ended. I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone, trying to convince myself it was a prank or just someone messing with me. But as I put the phone down, Bailey jumped off the couch and ran to the front door, barking like crazy. She was scratching at the door, snarling in a way I'd never heard before. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my phone, and just as I was about to call someone, it rang again. Same number. I hesitated but picked it up, hands shaking a little. This time, the whispering was louder, more aggressive. I still couldn't make out what was being said, but it sent a chill down my spine. The voice, it didn't sound right. It didn't sound human. I hung up, feeling my heart race, and called the police. They showed up about 20 minutes later, did a quick check around the house, but didn't find anything. No signs of forced entry, no one outside, nothing. The officer asked if I wanted them to stick around for a bit, but I shook it off, embarrassed at the whole situation. I mean, what was I going to say? Hey, can you hang out because I got a creepy phone call and my dog is acting weird? I could tell they didn't take it seriously. That night, I barely slept. Bailey refused to come into the bedroom, so I ended up crashing on the couch with her. Every little noise had me on edge, and I kept expecting my phone to ring again, but it didn't. The next morning, I tried to put it out of my mind. Maybe it really was just some weird prank call, right? But then I checked my phone. There was a voicemail from the same number. I played it, and it was just more whispering. But this time, I could make out a few words. They were distorted, like the voice had been slowed down or something, but I could hear it say, "Come outside." "Yeah, no thanks." I blocked the number, thinking that would be the end of it. But things only got worse. That night, I heard tapping on my windows. At first, it was just a soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just the wind or some tree branches. But the tapping didn't stop. It moved. First from the living room window, then to the kitchen, then to the bedroom. Bailey was going nuts, barking and growling at every window. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously looked outside. But there was nothing there. No one. I checked all the locks on the windows and doors, triple checking them, just to be sure. But the tapping continued, even though there was clearly no one outside. I barely slept again. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear that tapping. I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. The next few days were more of the same. Random noises, that weird tapping, and Bailey acting like there was something in the house that I couldn't see. I even had a couple of friends come over, and everything was fine when they were there. No tapping, no phone calls. It only happened when I was alone. One night, I was sitting in the living room, trying to relax. I had some music on, trying to drown out the weirdness. Bailey was next to me, but she was tense, her eyes locked on the hallway that led to my bedroom. Suddenly, the music cut out, replaced by static. My phone, which was on the coffee table, buzzed. I picked it up, and it was that same blocked number again. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't want to answer, but something in me, I don't know, something made me press accept. There was no whispering this time, just silence. I didn't say anything either, just listened, my heart pounding. And then, after what felt like forever, I heard it. A single, low voice, almost a growl. "Look behind you." I dropped the phone and spun around, my heart nearly stopping. Of course, there was nothing there. But Bailey had her teeth bared, growling at something I couldn't see. That was it for me. I grabbed my keys, leashed Bailey up, and got out of the house as fast as I could. I stayed with a friend that night. The next day, I went back to the house, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It didn't feel like my home anymore. I packed up a few things, left a note for my landlord, and moved out the following week. I've never gone back to that house, and I don't plan on it. Whatever was in there, whatever was making those calls, I don't want to know. All I know is that I should never have answered the phone that night.